The courtroom was silent, so silent you could hear the ticking clock on the back wall. The judge, a stern woman known for never showing emotion, sat high on her bench, flipping through the custody papers of a child who hadn't smiled in months. Her daughter, Emily, sat in a wheelchair beside her, her legs lifeless since the accident that took her mother's husband and Emily's father 2 years ago, and then, a man in worn boots and a faded army jacket walked in. His face carried scars, some visible, some buried deep. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a doctor. Just a single dad veteran, who had once known what it was like to lose everything. "Ma'am," he said softly, stepping closer to the bench. "I can make your daughter walk again." Everyone in the room turned. The bailiff frowned. The judge froze, thinking she'd misheard. But the man didn't flinch. His calm eyes met hers with a quiet confidence that came from somewhere far beyond words. The judge, trying to hide the tremor in her voice, asked, "And who exactly are you, sir?" "Daniel Cole," he said, standing straighter. "Former military medic. Single father of one." He looked down at the small boy beside him, a boy with bright eyes, walking proudly, though the metal brace on his leg told a story of its own. Daniel smiled faintly. "2 years ago, doctors said my son would never walk again either. But look at him now." The judge's lips parted, her gaze falling to the little boy who took a step forward, slow, careful, but strong. A wave of emotion flickered across her face before she hid it again behind her professional mask. The courtroom was dismissed soon after, but that moment didn't leave her. Later that day, as she wheeled Emily into the corridor, Daniel was waiting outside, talking to a nurse about a volunteer program for veterans who help children heal through therapy and adaptive exercises. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I didn't mean to overstep earlier. But I know what your daughter's going through. And I think I can help." The judge hesitated. She'd spent months visiting specialists, pouring money into treatment after treatment. Each time, they gave her the same answer: she may never walk again. She was tired. Emotionally drained. But something in Daniel's voice didn't sound like false hope. It sounded true. "All right," she whispered. "You have 1 week." That week turned into the most emotional journey of their lives. Daniel started small, helping Emily stretch her legs, talking to her, showing her that healing was as much about the heart as it was about the body. His son, Jacob, cheered her on every day, racing her down the hallway in his own leg brace, shouting, "You can do it, Emily." At first, she didn't believe him. She'd been told no too many times. But Daniel had a gift, not just in medicine, but in understanding pain. He never pushed her too hard. He told her stories about the soldiers he'd helped, the battles they fought not on fields, but in their minds. He'd say, "You know, Emily, pain tells us we're still alive. And being alive means there's hope." Slowly, something changed. Emily began to smile. She started moving her toes. Then one day, as Daniel helped her stand between 2 railings, she took a single trembling step. The moment she did, the judge gasped, covering her mouth with her hands, tears welling in her eyes. "Again," Emily whispered. "I can do it again." Day after day, she tried harder. And Daniel stayed by her side, patient, kind, never once taking credit. To him, it wasn't about being a hero. It was about giving a little girl the chance his son once fought for. But the story wasn't just about healing Emily. It was healing the judge too. She had built a wall of steel around her heart since losing her husband. She didn't laugh. She didn't believe in miracles anymore. Until she saw one right in front of her eyes. On the last day of therapy, Emily walked without support. The entire room cheered. The judge couldn't hold back her tears anymore. She rushed forward, falling to her knees, wrapping her daughter in her arms. Daniel stood quietly in the corner, smiling humbly, while Jacob clapped and shouted, "See? I told you she could do it." The judge turned to Daniel, her voice breaking. "You did what every doctor said was impossible. How can I ever repay you?" Daniel shook his head. "You don't need to. Just believe again. That's enough." But then, something unexpected happened. The judge noticed the small silver tag hanging from Daniel's neck, a military dog tag with a name she recognized. Her breath caught. "Wait. You served with Colonel James Parker?" Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. He saved my life in Kandahar. Why do you ask? Tears streamed down her cheeks. Because he was my husband. Silence filled the room. The man who had saved Daniel's life overseas had been the husband she lost, the same man whose daughter Daniel had just helped to walk again. Daniel's eyes softened. He told me about you, he whispered. Said if I ever found myself back home, to help others the way he did. I guess now I know what he meant. The judge covered her face, sobbing, not from sorrow this time, but from something deeper. Grace. Closure. A full circle moment only life could write. Months later, the courthouse held a small ceremony honoring Daniel for his volunteer work. The judge spoke publicly for the first time about how a single dad veteran restored her faith in humanity, in hope, in love. As Daniel lifted Emily into his arms, the crowd stood and applauded. Jacob smiled proudly beside him, his hand gripping his father's. The camera zoomed in on Daniel's calm face, the light catching the scars on his cheek. Never stop believing in miracles, he said, looking straight into the lens. Because sometimes, you're the miracle someone's waiting for. And that's when the screen faded to black, with one line across the bottom, backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, hit like, share, and subscribe. Let's spread hope one story at a time. Red heart, because sometimes, the most powerful miracles don't come from doctors or judges, they come from a single dad who never stopped believing that broken things can walk again.